I'm in 10th grade. Involved in speech and play.
My name is Anish and I'm in 10th grade. I'm also in speech and play.
My name is Gavin. I'm also a 10th grader and I'm also in PIT.
Mr. Asprey, assistant principal.
Cooper, I'm basically everything.
What grade are you, Cooper?
8th grade.
8th grade. You're junior.
My name is Justice. I'm in 9th grade and I'm in PIT. My name is Aubrey. I'm 11th grade and I'm in outside the state. Sorry. Anyway.
No excuse.
My name is Alyssa. I'm in 11th grade. I'm do soccer at Hey. Class officer. My name is Ashley. I'm a senior and I'm in track and field.
Hi guys, my name is Samaya. I am a senior, thankfully, and I am also in speech. I'm Sammy. I'm a senior and I'm on the FA.
My name is Ezzy and I'm in dance and state council and pay and some other stuff like that.
Awesome. Okay, block talk. So starting next school year, all of the high schools for West Fargo Public Schools will be transitioning to block schedule. So Horace is already doing it. So next year Cheyenne and West Fargo will join. One of the big reasons behind this is because we share staff and students. So we have teachers that also travel even all the way down to Horace. And so the more we can have our schedules be the same, it's easier for those staff and students who travel. There are a lot of different reasons why we're going to block schedule. I won't necessarily get into all of them. If you want to know some more specifics, that can be one of your questions. But just some basic logistics. Classes will be 90 minutes long. There will be 4 blocks of classes each day. So kind of thinking like we have an 8-period day right now. And then 4 of the periods would go on one day called an A day. And 4 of the periods would go on the other day, the next day called a B day. And so that's kind of how it would get broken down. Lunch would be a part of one of those blocks. So you would either have lunch and then a block, and then a lunch, or you'd be in a class, and we're hoping to limit this as much as possible, where you'd have 45 minutes, lunch, and then 45 minutes of that same class. So kind of a split block for that lunch. So those are the corners of the box on this. That's the basic framework. What questions do we have?
What time would the day start?
So the day would start at 8:30 a.m. We still need to talk with the transportation department because busing, right? Our busing is impacted by Cheney, which is impacted by Westside, and Ellie Berger, which is impacted by the Cheyenne because we share bus drivers. So we would be the school that starts latest, just like now, we're the high school that starts latest in the day. We would start at 8:30 and classes would end at 3:40.
Is there still no early bird then?
There is no early bird. We don't need it. We would be able to maximize all of our classroom space to not have early bird. This means all teachers would be available before school, like if you need help, and all teachers would be available after school if you need help. Yeah.
So is everyone getting to school and leaving school at the same time?
Not necessarily, because about 25% of the student body would have off first block, and about 25% of the student body would have off last block.
And that's our open?
That would be your open. So you would have an open or a study hall every day. So like on your A days, say your open is pure at the first block, you wouldn't need to be at school until 10 a.m. Say on B days your open is the last block of school, you could leave at 2. So that would be the flexibility there.
Do we still have packer time?
We will still have packer time, great question. The longest it would be is 30 minutes. It'll probably be a combination of win and packer time like it is right now. We don't know where in the day it's going yet. That's a decision that's being made by teachers.
So,
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Your open would switch between like A and B days. Like you might start late and end early one day.
It might. It might. We're trying to figure out how we can work with athletics to see if we can do something more consistent, especially for students who are in sports, but we're not 100% or even 90% on that yet. Just like how you kind of have 2 separate periods now, they might fall at different points in the day between first semester and second semester. That's kind of what would happen between your A and B days. We would just want to guarantee that you don't have both opens on the same day. So that way you're not taking a day of 4 full classes.
Is it recommended that you do take 6 classes, have 2 opens, or could you push the limits and say take
all 4 classes and all 4 classes? And
Yeah.
is block schedule set up good enough that that would be possible?
Yeah, so just like right now, if you want to take more than the 6, like if you don't want to have it open, you need to talk with your administrator and your counselor. That would still be the same thing. We think it'll be helpful for freshmen who might need like an intervention class, and so they come in because you have to take a lot of classes your freshman year, right? Just as you're in a ton of classes, you have no room for electives if you also need 21st century math or read 180. That takes away all your electives. So if you've been in band all through middle school, now all of a sudden you don't have room for band in your schedule. With block, you will, and that would be like a conversation. Those would be situations that we would approve going above and beyond. Same thing with like early graduation. We have a process for that. So if somebody wanted to leverage this time to graduate early, there would still be the same requirements in the process to go through that early grad process. But it does open up more opportunity for that. So if you wanted to, you could, but just like right now, if you want to do more than you're expected to, you need to chat with your administrator and counselor. Yeah.
I don't know if this is for sure. I just heard from some like students. So say you have like history on A day, is like your homework still due on the next day, or is it due on the B day?
The homework will be due the next time you have the class. At Horace High School, they even have it so the homework is due midnight. So like I have my A day on Monday, I go to US History. B day I don't have US History. A day again, Wednesday I have US History. My homework from that Monday isn't due until midnight that night. So Horace has it set up with something like that, so that way you see the teacher again before your homework is due. That'll be a decision we'll make here at the high school. I do think one of the cool things is like if I go home, if I have Algebra 2, we hear a ton about Algebra 2. If I go home and I have Algebra 2 homework and I don't know how to do it, I will be in school the next day and can see that teacher before that homework is due. You know?
What would lectures look like?
Well, we'd like to limit lecture as much as possible, knowing that it's not a instructional strategy that has a high yield for student learning, especially if it's done in longer amounts of time, right? So a 10 to 15, 10 to 20 minute lecture can be really powerful to deliver material, but anything longer, you're not gonna remember it, right? I think you all have been there. And so wanting to try, this opens up the door for teachers to utilize other instructional strategies like project-based learning, scenarios, simulations, philosophical chairs, debates, more of those sorts of things is the goal of this because you have more time in the class. Yeah,
Are we still offering the same number of classes?
we sure are. Same number of classes, same grade teachers, all the things. None of that will change.
And you still need the same amount of credits to graduate?
Still need the same amount of credits to graduate, and we're not gonna make you take more classes. If you want that open every day, you have that open every day.
With the longer classes, would that mean you would get more credits than you would normally?
No, since it's A/B, so you won't be in that class every other day. Yeah, so it's still the same amount of credit. Yeah.
Is like the academy, like transition still something we're looking for?
Yeah, so that's a really big question right now. So there are some administrators and teachers that are traveling to an academy conference in November. They're gonna learn a little bit more about it. I think after this last staff learning day, there were a lot of questions that came up about pros, cons, especially how does it look in a high school that was built in the 1980s, not for the academy model. So we're trying to figure out now like what is tight and what is loose about the academy model.
Do you know how that will affect like, the next year's block schedule?
It won't have any impact on next year's block schedule. There are about 15,000 high schools that are in block across the United States, academy model or not. Yeah.
But there's still gonna be late starts.
No, most likely not. Wednesdays would be able to start on time because staff are gonna get more planning time built into their day with the way this is kind of working. And so they'll be able to collaborate with those teachers during the day. And so staff might still come in early a little bit. We're trying to figure that out, but students would start the same time every day, which for a lot of our special populations, routine is really important. And so not having a day that's kind of disruptive will be helpful for that group of kids.
So would we, if we had open, would it be like 2 hours one day and not the next day, or it'd be like 2 hours each day?
It'd be 90 minutes each day that you would have an open. Because classes are 90 minutes long.
Would you
Okay.
try and situate the open so they're not in the middle of the day?
So there would only be one open that would kind of be a bummer. Okay, let's do your schedule, Alyssa. What's your schedule right now?
First period?
Yeah,
US history.
US?
Yep. Second is AP Lang Comp. Third is microbiology.
Oh, that's a way to start your morning right there. Woo! Okay.
Fourth is chemistry.
Oh my
Fifth is trig. Sixth is AP Bio.
Where's your lunch?
Oh, the middle one. 5A?
In between chemistry.
Yeah.
And then 7 is your open.
Yeah, 7 is
That's nice. Okay, so this is what Alyssa's schedule looks like right now. So, and then technically, because we're a 1 through 8 school, you also have a period 8, but it's
open.
open. So so let's say that we were gonna take all of your odd classes and put them on the A day. And so there are 4 blocks. So you would have US, and then microbio, and in this one, this would probably, and we don't know which like departments or classes, but this would be your split block, most likely. This would be, you'd have 45 minutes of microbio, lunch, 45 minutes of microbio, and then trig, and then open. And then if I took your even classes, you'd start your B day with AP Lang, and then you'd go to Chem, and then you'd have AP Bio, and then you'd have your open. Does that make sense?
Microbiology, so like how will semesters look? So because microbiology is only a semester.
The same, you take it for the semester and then you get a new class.
So we'll still have semesters and quarters.
Yes, all that stays the same. So there are 2 kinds of block. Like if you hear this language, there's the AD model, which is what we're doing, where you have like an A day and a B day with 4 classes each. And then there's a model called the 4x4, which is kind of what West Fargo High did a long time ago when it was not good. But it wasn't all classes were blocked, some were skinny, some changed. I'm not sure anybody's really sure what happened. So in a 4x4, that's when you would take an entire semester class in a quarter, because you would only have 4 classes in a block every single day, the same 4, and then at the quarter it would change. And we're not doing that. No, thank you. It's bad for AP classes, especially because then you do your whole AP class in the fall and you have to remember all the information for the test in the spring. So AB lets you take that AP class all the way through the end of the year. 4x4 was also not great because say you took Algebra 1 first semester of your freshman year, but you didn't have geometry until second semester of your sophomore year, you went a whole year without having any math, and then you were like, I don't remember any of this. Okay, let's do another one. Justice, what's your schedule?
I don't know, first period, my second period is science.
Open Phi-Sci?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second is Spanish.
Perfect.
Fourth is maybe study hall. Well, study hall.
Study hall.
A freshman still required to take a study hall.
I'm getting there.
And then English.
Was strong?
Yeah.
That's great.
Then I have my lunch.
Okay. And then,
Math.
and then,
Health.
and then,
Well, yeah.
okay. So, all freshmen are gonna have to start in a study hall, like right now. Difference, sophomores won't have to start in a study hall. Sophomores will automatically get an open. The plan is for sophomores to automatically get an open unless they fail something second semester of their freshman year. So if you fail a class, it doesn't matter what grade you are, if you fail a class, your freshman, sophomore, junior, you're gonna start the year in a closed study hall. So Justice's schedule would look like this. So on A day, she'd get to be able to come to school late. Then she'd have Spanish, and then she'd have English, and then she'd have health. This, though, would only happen if she earned it. So she would have to start in a study hall, and then if she has passed, kind of like we did for sophomores this year, if you're passing at a certain point with parent permission, it could turn into an open. So then on B days, she would start the day with Phi-Sci, and then she would have a study hall. This would be a nice one to turn into an open, because then you have a 2-hour lunch break where you can run a ton of errands, because I'm sure you all go grocery shopping for your families. And then we would have math, and then world geo. So both of these would start as study halls and have the opportunity to turn into open campuses. So if like a student was in special education, that would be, they would still have like the one possibility, but they would need to stay in the other study hall for the support, the resources, the minutes that they have. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there gonna be any classes that are only offered on one day, like only offered on A days?
So just like right now, some classes are only offered one period, right? So those would kind of be the same, like I'm trying to think. A lot of like AP Calc is only offered once, so therefore it would still only be offered once. So it might be on an A day, it might be on a B day. We would likely run into a lot of the same issues we have right now, where like sometimes wind ensemble is right on top of AP Calc, which is right on top of Spanish 4, and there's no other sections offered for that, but we have that issue right now. So we'll have to see. This does give us a little bit more play, like with independent studies and those kind of things, where maybe we can create some more opportunities. Also, we have a couple of seniors that would really like to take college classes, but because we're on a skinny, that's what this is, a skinny schedule, they can't get over and back in time to like go to NDSU. And so if they were able to, like if a senior wanted to take a class at NDSU, this provides them with a little bit more flexibility, because we can make sure that class and that open or back to back. That could be a whole afternoon every other day for them to go take a class. Yeah.
Is there gonna be an attempt to like balance the schedules? Maybe not have like one student's like all their AP classes in one day, and then the next day have like a gym and an elective.
I think we definitely should try, yeah. And I think that would then become something, like, you know, that schedule change form that we do, where like if you have, kind of like balancing right now, like if you have Gov and Econ in the same semester, we try not to make you do that. Or if you end up having Trig and Stats in the same semester, we try to avoid that, where we could add something like all of my AP dual credit classes are on the same day. So that way we could try to flip those around.
So there's no way of like leaving the 4-3-40 and having a break in the middle of your classes? It would be an open in the middle of the day or at the end?
It would be, I mean, you'd have your lunch break, but it would be an open in the middle of the day or at the end, yes.
The lunch is still 30 minutes.
Lunch is still 30
And
minutes.
passing period is still 4 minutes.
That's something we're talking about. I think 5 minutes is on the table. An extra minute, oh boy.
It's so good.
Also just because like when things end in like 37:53, I think it's harder to remember them. Yeah. What else?
Would there be any opportunities for teachers to kind of decide to like put their classes as a skinny, not necessarily like officially on the board, but one thing that we were discussing in band the other day was possibly having band every day, but then cutting it in half and having like a study hall the second half of the period, but we just like have it in the band area.
Yeah, so I think music is a different beast, especially because there's a lesson component with music, so there needs to be some sort of differentiation so students have that time. And so if that looks like lessons are on like scheduled on the B days, and band is the class is scheduled on the A days, and then Jordan kind of has the flexibility to do what she needs to do with that time. Not unlike a student who's taking Algebra 1 and 21st century algebra, and kind of having that both days. I do think there are lots of different ways to structure a 90-minute block, and so like, because I only ever taught on the block until I got to West Fargo High. This was the first time I had to teach on a skinny, and tell you what, it was really hard to go from having 90 minutes of all this time to do all this cool stuff, and then having to, like, my first year teaching here, like, get halfway through an activity and be like, oh my gosh, the bell is ringing already. What is happening? So there are a lot of different things that you can do to break up your class on a block, and so that might look like a more structured lesson for the first half of the class, and then that project or that work time or that lab or whatever it is for the second half. And so we're trying to work with teachers to figure out what they already feel good about and what they still want some resources on for how to structure it that way if that's what they want to do. Yeah.
I was in like a test block for English junior year.
Oh yeah.
And we had like a 5-minute break halfway through because of passing time.
Mm-hmm.
Would we still have that?
So probably not as a whole school, right? Because then it just really defeats the purpose. If halfway through the block you're like, okay, all 1,400 of you can now walk through the hallways for 4 minutes and then come back. However, brain breaks are going to be really important, and that's a conversation we're having as a teacher leadership team, is do they have to happen in the classroom? Will we allow small pockets of students to like do a lap? But then how do you manage that when everybody's doing the lap at the same time? So enforcing the importance of brain breaks, but knowing that we will likely not allow like everybody to go walk the halls for 5 minutes at the halfway point, if that makes sense. People haven't asked any questions. Great.
Do you have like lunch one day?
Yeah, so you would have lunch, it would be during the same block every day. One of the things we're trying to figure out is, because then your lunch might change, right, from one day to the next day, which would be annoying, so we're trying to figure out if that can be avoided. At Horace, they're doing it by academy, so this whole academy is eating lunch at this time, so then that guarantees that you have lunch at the same time every day. We're not in academies. That's something we're gonna have to figure out. Some of this is like, once we get the schedule into Power School and start playing around with it, we'll figure out like what are our limitations and what can we do. And also, this is gonna be the first year of doing this. So the worst year is gonna be next year, right? Anytime you try something new, this is a big change, it's gonna be tough. So then we'll learn things that we'll be able to improve over time. Yes, ma'am.
I know kids take summer school. What will that look like? Will they still follow block schedule, or will they follow?
I mean, summer school is like ultra block right now. It is the blockiest of blocks, given that you take a class for what? 6 hours a day? Yeah. So it'll still look the same. Yeah. The blockiest of blocks. Yeah.
So will it be possible to get 2 opens on the same day?
I think you would have to take 4 a different day. Like, you'd have to take the whole load. I don't think we would be opposed to that if there was a good reason. Like, for example, a student needing to work, or the class at NDSU or something like that. So I think those are the kind of situations where we're talking with your admin counselor and being like, hey, I really need this to happen for my schedule, and here's why. These are good questions. Way to think about the summer school piece. What else? What are we most nervous about?
Not doing my homework. Yeah, because sports start at 4.
And like
school
morning
ends at 3:40.
practice.
Sure.
Like you have morning practice, you go to school, you have an open at the end of the day, you can do homework for a little bit, and then you go to practice, you do homework at the end of practice, and then it's like 12 and you want to sleep. So that's why I like having open in the middle of the day, because it's like I can push off my college algebra homework to do during my open, because after lunch
Oh,
I
sure.
can like push that off, so now I like can't push my homework.
Yeah.
So I don't know when that time to sleep.
That's not good. Your open will be 90 minutes as opposed to the 48 it is right now. So it's almost double the length. right, of your open campus right now. Broken up over the day, it will be a bigger chunk of time. But yeah, I think there will be new routines that a bunch of people need to make to figure out what works. I wonder if morning practices, there aren't a lot of teams that do morning practices. Congratulations, Dance. You know, so not sure if more teams will do morning practices to open up evenings, or provide options. So that'll be an interesting thing to work with, like activities on, to see what all that looks like.
Is there anything that would change technology-wise?
I don't think so. There's a big conversation happening right now about iPad pens, and the future of those and like when students get them, class sets, all that kind of thing, but that's not really related to Block.
Yeah, I just think a hurdle for me would be like, we're just taking in a lot of information in one day and then having a whole day in between, and then you come back and you might like just have no idea what you're doing.
Sure. And that's, I think, one of the biggest like concerns for some teachers too, is like, how will you retain knowledge from one day to the next day? And so a lot of the things that are recommended with Block is like using that beginning of time to do a review from the day before. Things are longer, so you should probably always have some time to do a review even before like a test day, like on that same day, like a review and then the test, so you don't sit down and take a test right away. I also think like this promotes learning strategies that will hopefully help you remember things more. You know, if you're not remembering something from a Monday to a Wednesday, did we actually learn it? You know what I mean? And so how can we make sure that we're using those strategies that really help us remember things and really ingrain them in us? And of course, you guys are still have a million different things on your plates, just like staff. So what can we do to help like jog your memory at the beginning? Also, this is one of the reasons why we're trying to, like we're talking about win sessions and do those happen more often. So that way, like I was not a math student. So when I was taking calc, it would have been really helpful for me as a student to have a win session on those in-between days to just go and check in with the teacher and be like, I know I will suck at this the next day if I don't talk to you today. And so how can we leverage win sessions to kind of do that too? Yeah.
90 minutes is like a long time to look at an iPad, so are there going to be stuff set in place that we don't look at an iPad the entire class period?
That's a great point, and I think all that comes back to like we shouldn't lecture for 90 minutes. We shouldn't probably sit and silent read for 90 minutes. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't do for 90 minutes, so how do we make sure that we're not doing those things and that teachers feel empowered and comfortable using other instructional strategies?
For tests, right now you get like 48 minutes. Are you gonna like, how long would you review it? So you don't want to
Yeah. That would be excessive. I think, teachers spend a lot of quality time working with their teams to build those assessments, so I would imagine a lot of the assessments would stay the same, or be tweaked slightly, so then hopefully you would have a good 20-minute chunk to review.
So are teachers gonna have extra workshops specifically about block schedules within the next few months to a year?
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do right now, and of course it's not a perfect process. We have some teachers in this building who've taught in block, love teaching in block, are like, started tomorrow, I'd be good to go. And then we have some teachers that are like, and so trying to get all of those people on the same page and have professional learning that doesn't feel redundant for people who don't need it, but that is helpful for people who do. I think we're really trying to empower departments to figure out what that looks like, because a science classroom is very different than an English classroom, which is very different than a woods lab, which is very different than music. So trying to tailor it to what the department needs. We have a day coming up in February that'll hopefully be very department-led. And then we have another professional learning day in May for staff, and then they have opportunities like during their regular day as they finish a lesson to think about how would I do this in block, and kind of go through like that. Yeah.
So you talked about woods, and I know another one is I think diesel engines.
Yeah.
So they have 2 credits, so 2 classes back to back. Is that still going to be the way that they do things?
Yeah. So if it's a block class right now, it will happen every day, just like it does right now. So like rec engines happens every day in a block. Next year it will happen every day in a block. They won't have to cut 50% of their material to go to an every other day block. Yeah.
What
Uber
would,
them.
so would it allow more kids to be enrolled into the same class, having it on every other day?
Class sizes we'll want to keep like maxed as we do right now, and try to make sure that the loads aren't somewhere between that 20 to 30 student range. It is with the ability to take more classes. That's something we're anxious to see over time, is what classes, especially electives, might have some more interest because there's a little bit more flexibility in the schedule.
As an administrator, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge to the whole transition?
That's a great question, Anish. Thank you for asking. Well, change is hard, right? So I think it's hard because the unknown is scary. For a lot of teachers, this is either unknown, they haven't done an AB schedule before, or they have done some sort of block at West Fargo High and it wasn't great. And so I think it will be hard making sure that everyone is comfortable, staff and students. And I don't think everyone will be perfectly comfortable, and I think that's something we're gonna have to be okay with, right? Change is hard, change is really scary, that this is something that we can't expect to be perfect off the bat, and that's really hard for people who have been very, very good at their jobs for so long to make such a big change, and for students who have done something, like for Alyssa and Aubrey and Sawyer and Cooper, for people who have had high school look one way for 3 years, and now all of a sudden I'm telling you on your senior year, I'm gonna pull the rug out from under you and it's gonna be really different, and you're afraid about getting your homework done and all of those other things. That's hard, and so asking people to be like, we gotta take the next step, knowing that it's not gonna be great, as great as it could be that first year. And then, hopefully by the time the current 8th graders at Cheney get to their senior year, we've worked out a lot of kinks, we've been able to adjust a lot of things, and figure out the way to make it work best for students. So I think getting people to a place where they're ready to take the first step, but also comfortable knowing that they'll be comfortable being uncomfortable with that first step, if that makes sense. Yeah.
With the current 8th graders, are they like the incoming freshmen? Are they going to be like told all this like ahead of time? Because even looking at the schedule now, like, at the beginning of the year, it's very
Yeah. So the first step is to tell all of you guys, which will be happening next week in Packer time. And then the next step is to work with Cheney to figure out how we want to do that. We're going to have some informational sessions for parents too, so that way if they have questions or concerns that they can connect with administrators about that. But yeah, I think there's a whole process of informing, especially leading up to registration, although registration, you'll still be registering for the same classes, it's more on that back end in Power School that we're going to need to work at. But just in case it does change someone's thoughts about what they want to do, or if they do want to take more classes, or those sorts of things, so that way they can have those conversations before registration in February. Yeah.
How do you think certain students will be affected, or even teachers will be affected, like if certain teachers just cannot handle the block schedule?
Well, I think like how certain teachers are affected right now by other changes. There are a lot of things, iPads, the school has adjusted quite a bit, WIN sessions, all of these other things, and not, there are people who are staff and students alike that didn't necessarily feel comfortable with those changes, and so we just constantly have to work as a team to, what are the biggest questions you have, how can we answer them, what are the biggest pain points, how can we address them, and just constantly refining, taking notes on what doesn't work and trying to make it better. Okay. Is there anything we're excited about? Aubrey says absolutely not. Yeah.
I know I'm not gonna be here for it, but science classes sound like they're gonna be so much better because you have time to learn like the technique you're gonna use in the lab. You have time to learn about what is happening, and then you have time to do the whole lab.
Sure.
And you don't have to split it up over multiple days. Like chemistry last year, time in the lab, you were time crunched for everything. You had to work really fast to get everything done, and now you have an extended period of time where you don't have to put everything away and then come back again. So.
I'm happy there's an opportunity to take more classes.
With that, This will be shared with all students, all staff, really everybody. I mean, you're gonna be famous. And then next Friday is when we're gonna roll out some things in Packer time, and administrators will be available at lunch that day for other questions that you have. And then things with families will happen later in November and December. But if those are things that you like want your parents to hear, or if your parents want to ask us questions, there'll be opportunities for that kind of stuff too. Okay? All right, thank you for your time with this. Good deal. Aubrey, it's gonna be okay.
You'll see my grade climb next year.
You're gonna be okay.